and welcome to my class. Students, today we are going to begin the history chapter, and perhaps you have already completed 3 chapters for your unit test. So today this chapter 4 we will be including in your unit test. So let us go how this chapter is actually elaborating for us to know. Now under this chapter we will be having the very systematic some points which is very important. So the title of the chapter in fact we will be discussing, that is on colonialism and tribal societies. So colonialism and tribal societies, when we talk about, we will come to know about the British, how these Britishers actually having the grabbed the power in the tribal areas, and how the forestry areas are actually deprived of the tribals. So those are the things actually we will be discussing today in this video. Now under this title you will be hearing the different points, that is tribal people and their activities. Second point, we will be discussing about the tribal life during the 19th century, and then a third point, tribal revolts in a Chotanagpur. Fourth point, tribal revolts in a northeast India, and the last point, other revolts. So related with this topic we will be discussing here. Now we know that our tribals are actually whom we call them scheduled tribes. So hardly this according to the 2011 census you will be getting this particular tribes, how many percent of the this tribal people are actually belong to India. So you will be coming and you will be surprising about it. So here 8.6% of this tribal people are actually existing in India, and that is actually we can see here. And so the tribal population of India is mostly actually concentrated in the remote part of the country, and living away from the mainstream society. The ways the tribal life are actually very quite different than the mainstream society. So today, for example, mainstream societies are very advanced in science and technology, in education, in medical, and many other areas. The mainstream society is so much of ahead of us, is it not? So when we talk about these tribals, so suppose here let us know about the tribal people actually first of all. Now in earlier days we have to understand that how this British actually, before arrival of the Britishers, how these tribals were having the control on their own tribes, and then how these particular tribals actually started flourishing, and then they were not having any type of worry on their own ways of running the society. So you will be coming to know, and you know there are many norms and regulations and rituals that is actually practiced in the tribal area, are very much having the difference from the mainstream society. So therefore they had their own sets of rituals and traditions that we can see, which are very much different from the non-tribals, and also they led a simple lives. Their life is not much complicated as we can look for so many things today. For example, when we look at the tribal house, you will see hardly any things we can find. For example, their houses is made up of a thatch, especially straw and leaves and wood and bamboos. All these areas materials are actually required, and then they are found that way. And then their food items are maybe sometimes fish and all, sometimes meat, or sometimes fruits, sometimes some grains, and then varieties of things like that from the forest they just extract. So that is how they are living. So let us study about them in a detail. Now hunting and gathering was actually practiced by these tribals actually very often, and when we look at the hunting and gathering, that is a part and parcel of this tribals. So they sold whenever they are gathering, whenever they are getting many of the things like that. So they are just gathering the things and all, and then they sell the products in the market, such as herbs and that medical value. Herbs are having the medical value, and I think this particular tribals are the mostly they know about the herbals, which leaves is meant for what type of use. So that one they are very much aware about it. So we can find it. So the tribal groups also reared animals, and then you can see that how the cultivation and then how they have domesticated the animals and then made the farm, and then so much of this business they used to do from as a living nomads, and so many other areas they are very much. So some of the examples we can find that the Gaddis of Himachal Pradesh, these tribe in fact are actually living a kind of like a nomadic life, which is perhaps they are caring or rearing the this their goats and cows and all, and then they are selling it and then moving. And then Bakar walls of Kashmir, that one also part of the this how this nomads tribe. And then also Lavadis of Andhra Pradesh, they are also part of the this tribes which is moving from one place to another place. And agriculture was one of the main source of this tribals, and you find that these people are actually always engaging themselves in the agriculture. So today we can see that different parts of the our country, India especially, mostly the agriculture is the basic job or activity we can impose or we can see. So here, when we look at the livelihood, these tribals, and then having a lot of in them. So many tribal actually communities followed the shifting cultivation. In fact, some of the areas, this is especially when there is a hilly region or something like that, we will find. Then a shifting cultivation is also practiced. Even in the plain area also, the shifting cultivation is a practice. Now, what is exactly the shifting cultivation all about? Now, a certain area covered with these tribal people are clearing the jungles, and when the jungle is getting dried up, then they burn it. After having burned it, the area becomes like a totally slushy, especially ashes are actually spreading everywhere, and mud is getting black. And then in this area, they are spreading it, and then they are cultivating the land for at least a few years. And once the fertility of this soil is getting disappear, losing its fertility, then they are changing the places, and then they are going for the other places for the this again the shifting cultivation they are practicing. So this way they are practicing, and then after few years again they are coming back to the same area where the things are actually reproducing, or the fertility is gaining back after maybe few years. So those things are actually we see in the tribals very often. And today, for example, in a Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, all these areas are also this shifting agriculture is practiced very much. Maybe the government is a little bit trying to ban them, because when there is a slash and burn this agriculture actually kind of like a harmful for the rest of the nature, especially while putting the fire. Many of the animals are dying there. New plants which is growing, that one also getting dried up and dying, and so many things are happening over there. So that is actually also part of the demerit from the part of the this Jhum cultivation. Okay, so under Jhum cultivation, how this small patch of land is actually cleared and burned. That one we have already learned. Now, let us know about the tribal life during the 19th century. Now, you see during the 19th century, how this tribal life actually lived, and how it was having the impact on the others. So, as mentioned earlier, the tribal communities resided in remote areas within hills and forest, and then the nature sustained themselves by their surroundings. They led the simple life following their own customs and traditions. And unfortunately, the life of the tribal communities actually who kept to themselves was actually disrupted during the British period. So their life was very smoothly going on, and then but their misery started the moment the Britishers actually entered into the tribal land. And then what happened here? They started implementing new rules and regulations which actually adversely affected the this tribal life. So therefore, we will come to know about the impact of the land revenue system. Now we have in the previous chapter we have learned about the land revenue system, that is a permanent settlement, area 3 system, and then a Mahalwar system. So these three systems we have discussed. Now in this system you will be basically you'll come to know that how these tribals were actually suffered in this regard. Now see, the land revenue, for example, had been an important source of income since the ancient times, and the British started the systems of permanent settlement to collect land revenue. So we have to really say aware about it, how this Britishers entered to this area. And then according to the this system, a zamindar, zamindars was given the responsibility of collecting revenue on behalf of the British. Now one person will be there. He may not be the from the tribal society, but he may also from the plain area, or from the Bengal, or from somewhere like that. But he may not be the person from the tribal society. So such kind of people are actually appointed for the collection of the revenue in this Jamindari system. And how much like a percentage of the Jamindari systems that is have to give? He has to give the 89% of the revenue collection he has to give to Britishers, and then 11% he has to keep. And therefore, in order to collect the revenue, many of the areas, many of the forest land were actually by the Jamindars actually asked to clear the areas, and then started what called putting the agriculture and all, and then how this agriculture actually implemented over there. So how this Jamindars actually, in the quest of increasing the cultivable land, they actually manipulated a lot of areas, and then many of the tribals actually who sustained themselves on this area by collecting the fruits and herbs and vegetables from the jungle, but they were deprived of that. And therefore, to survive, they were actually forced to take loans from the money lenders, and and the Jamindars actually provided the loan, but in return they were not able to return it, because the land was actually taken away, the forestry was actually captured by these Zamindars, and then practically every land was actually occupied with the cultivation in order to pay the loan 89% to the Britishers. So this actually made the life of these tribals very much miserable. And today we can see that many of the tribals from the main state, they were actually shifted to the different state. Today many of the tribals have come from Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh to Assam as a tea labor, as a tea gardener, and many of the areas, road construction, building construction, you can find most of the tribal people are working over there. So this is one of the disadvantages that has taken place in India, and then they were deprived of the many of the of their land. So that is how. So they were actually the owners of that land, but then they were deprived of that because of their simplicity and a very welcoming people. Okay, so here what happened? These Jamindars were actually when they have taken the loan in order to survive, in order to live, then this loan was not able to repair. Then these people became the unending this bonded labor, and then here the debt was not able to pay back, and as a result of this, many of the tribals are actually started finding very difficult to survive themselves. And some people actually because of that left the areas even and gone away to somewhere very far away, and their tribal life was actually disappeared. So they acquainted with a new life, and today we can see that many people are deprived of that opportunities. So next we have seen that during the British rule, most of the wood and many other products supposed to carry from this remote area to the coastland. Then you know what happened? The construction of the railway started, because the British knew that without the train, without the a train, they can't carry the heavy chunks of this wood and this raw material from this remote to the coastal area. So therefore, the construction of the railways also started by the Britishers. And once the construction started, the government actually disturbed the many of the areas. And then here the tribal people, in fact, they found again difficult, because their jungles are getting cleared, and then they are laying the railway tracks, and many of the people were forced to leave the areas, and then those areas are actually kept as forbidden areas. So that is how it became. So some parts of the forest were actually declared as a reserve forest, and today we can see the reserve forest we have got. So that is, they were actually to use by the government for the supply of timber, and the tribals and the village people found it difficult to survive with so many restrictions. So that is how. And meanwhile, what happened, the Christian missionaries also arrived, and many Christian missionaries, they took the advantage of this one. And then many of the Christian missionaries actually taking the situation, people were in a misery, people were in a poor condition. So to survive themselves, some of them, they started taking the religion of the this foreign religion, especially Christianity was actually introduced here. And then many of the tribals were actually converted, and then tribals were actually took the advantage of this, and then they acquired means they adopted the Christianity. So you can see that many of the tribals people are actually, today we can find a Christian. Why? Because the it was a time when these people were actually not having any other choices. So they deprive of their religion, they deprive of their norms and rituals and customs, and then they found the new religion, and then they started manipulating them very often, and a lot of exploitation has been taken place. So therefore, the tribal communities actually resented very much due to this, and then this as an intrusion. So their resentment, especially the angerness, transformed into violent outbursts, and then that came to be known as the tribal revolt. So the tribal revolt began because of the this compulsion they made for them to survive that way. So how this tribal revolt began? First of all, tribal revolts in Chota Nagpur, how this actually began. Now, tribal revolts in India were as a result of a British encroachment on their lands, and the tribal communities were a close-knit group of people who had limited interaction with the non-tribal population. Now, they considered that non-tribal population, especially the British officials, the landlords and the moneylenders, as outsiders, and the tribals referred to these outsiders as Dikhus. Now, we have to understand that those tribals who belong to that area, they were considering the moneylenders, landlords and Britishers as a outsider. It means they, in the local language, they were calling them Dikhus. Okay, so the term Dikhus. Now, during the British period, the Chota Nagpur region actually witnessed a series of rebellions, starting from the Kol rebellion, then followed by the Santhal and Munda rebellion. So these few rebellions actually has been taken place. Now let me talk about the Kol rebellion, which is began in the year of 1827. So the Kols were actually inhabitants of the Chota Nagpur region, and in 1820, what happened? The King Porhat accepted the British control, and agreed to pay huge taxes to them. Now sometimes the kings and rulers are actually when they are coming into contact with the Britishers, then they are agreeing their what called agreement, and then they are accepting their invitation, and they become the friendly with the Britishers, but they make the suffer the others. So here what happened? The Kols did not actually agree to this arrangement and rebelled. So the Kols used traditional weapons in order to prevent these people to enter here. So bows and arrows they use, and then which actually proved to be no match to the British troops, which use modern weaponry. Britishers brought the modern weaponry, and then here the Britishers actually succeeded to overcome on these people. So the Kols were actually exploited. The moment these Kols were actually captured and dominated, they were actually exploited very badly by the non-Adivasi Tegera, we can call them contractors. So they felt threatened by the encroachment, of the British Jamindars and other non-tribals, and thus revolted against them, and the British were able to suppress the rebellion, but a lot of lives were actually lost during the rebellion. So the tribals were actually not having the much modern techniques to prevent from such kind of incident, but then the Britishers actually managed to succeed to overcome, and then they control on them. And during this process, many people even died during this small battle. So that is how. So in the next class, I will talk about the Santhal rebellions, and followed by our Munda rebellion and revolts of Northeast India. Okay. So take care, all of you, and thank you, and have a good day ahead.